Hello everyone, and welcome to a new series that I'm going to start on my channel. It's going to be the very first timeline or a time-lapse series that I've done in quite a long time. The last one I think I remember doing was Fury 325, and that was back on my older version of Fury, and not the newest one that you're seeing on the channel now, which is the finalized layout. So what you see in front of you is Gambit, which was a wood coaster built by Silvarret. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description below. And it's a roller coaster that he wanted to test with and fiddle with, but soon after he finished the layout is when Frontier came out with the ability to adjust the friction on roller coasters, which is why he basically abandoned this project. And even what he told me was it's a testament to it's just a testament to how early on he abandoned the series, because it only came out with one episode. So I was like, well, would you like me to custom support it? So he said, sure. And some of the custom supports, like what you see here, I'm getting ready to just go ahead and get rid of all the in-game supports and the in-game catwalks. I want to do my own in-game supports and catwalks, kind of like I did on Fury. So this will be my first time doing wooden coaster supports, so I figured why not, and here I am just getting rid of all the supports on the coaster. I don't want to see them at all. And it's just a little click away. Now you're just left with kind of like what you would see in No Limits, with just bare track and cross ties. And here, so I realized I had adjusted the friction of the coaster. I think I made it 0.7, so that seemed realistic to me. And I realized that the train was now coming into the brakes way too fast. In fact, it was actually passing the brakes entirely. So this is the only part of the layout I'm changing, is the station area. So the brakes and to the lift hill is all I'm changing, the layout. Everything else is staying the same. And here I'm fiddling with, and I had to close the window to go to YouTube and check out some other GCIs. But every GCI that I know of, the brakes are banked at like 6 or 7 degrees. That's just how the pneumatics work on the braking system, so the train can. It's something with how the brakes align with the train. It has to be aligned in a certain degree. So I went back in. Still have had that. It was like 1 degree or something, not really noticeable. So I adjusted it to 6, and I have to redesign this entire section since I've had to increase the length of the brakes. A lot of GCIs now have sort of a pre-lift section, like an RMC does, where you'll do a couple of hills or something and then go into the lift. So right here I'm just trying to figure out, okay, where do I want the station? Because I also want the transfer track. And one coaster that I really kept in mind was Thunderhead at Dollywood, because it has sort of a helix going into the lift, and it also has the transfer before you go into the station. So I was like, okay, how can I incorporate this? And it really took a lot of figuring out exactly how I wanted it to look, because I didn't want to go out of this little section. I wanted to keep it all wound up in here. So trying to figure that out was definitely a challenge, because I'm definitely not familiar with wood coaster layouts. And it'll be a lot of fiddling back and forth with what I want to do. I thought of, well, maybe I can do the pre-lift section first and figure out where I want the station. So that's what I was doing here. And then I figured out, well, maybe I should do the brake area first and the transfer area so that I can figure out where I want the station. But because that's the main issue, is trying to figure out where I want the station. Because obviously I can't really go over or under any parts of the track. Most GCIs typically don't do that. They only cross over or under each other in usually straight areas. You won't really see a GCI going under a curved section of track. And there are some custom supports already on this. Those were done by, I think Sylv said they were done by a guy named, he goes by Bear. So not quite sure who that is. I may be keeping those supports, I may be redoing them. I don't know, it all depends on what material I decide to use for the supports. And I asked Sylv if there was a particular theme for this coaster, and he said no. So I think I'm just going to go with just a rustic theme, something like what Dollywood has with their theme. So I believe that's what I'm going to keep in mind. I'll keep Thunderhead in mind when doing the supports and doing the theming for the attraction. I'm not sure if I'm going to do all of the buildings. I may do some structural work for the buildings and then send it back to Silv and see if he wants to do his own station or whatever. I'm not quite sure. My main task is just getting the damn thing supported. Okay, so here I finally figured out where I wanted the brake run. And now it's a matter of figuring out where do I want the station. I really don't have much I can talk about with any of this, actually. I'm not sure how much of this project I will time lapse. It just depends on how the video looks when I start supporting it, because I can't keep the camera in one spot and do a bunch of tiny work. I always move the camera around. Like with Haunted Mansion, it would be really hard to do a time lapse of Haunted Mansion. I may do one whenever I get back into that ride, but there may be a lot of jumping around, or there may be a lot of jump cuts, things like that. Like there's a lot that I cut out of this time lapse because it was just me trying to figure out where I wanted the track to go, because I really had no idea what I wanted to do. So and something like Fury 325, the track work on that alone took about 400 hours. So and the time lapse for that is like, it would be me building a section of track, smoothing it back and forth 4 or 5 times, and then riding it several times, along with the real POV on the other computer screen. And it's a lot of back and forth of me deleting it, going back to an old save and rebuilding that part of the track. And that's why it took so long to build that. So a time lapse like that wouldn't be interesting at all to watch. And here I'm trying to figure out, okay, because originally Silv had the trains being 11 cars, and most GCIs have 12-car trains, which is what I'm trying to do here. So trying to figure out how big the station actually needs to be, because for some reason, stations in the game are ungodly long and they're ungodly big. No idea why. I guess it's just how the peeps are programmed. So I know that I want you go through the main brakes, make a turn, go through the transfer, which has a block section, and then make another turn back into the station. And so right here is when I figured out, okay, I think I want to put the station right next to this other track, so that way I can have a bit of a station flyby. Because that's something this layout didn't have, was a station flyby, and that's what most GCIs are known for, like Thunderhead, for example. The flyby happens on the exit side of the attraction, the station. So here I'm going to have it occur underneath the people as they come onto the ride. And so now it's a matter of figuring out going into the lift hill. I can't have this be too close to the track because there are clearance envelopes you have to meet. And so with the pre-drop with the pre-lift section, I looked a lot at Gold Striker at California's Great America, because that one it was that one and Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. I used both of those as inspiration for the pre-lift section. I didn't want to do too much in this area because I think I'm going to mostly fill it up with foliage or something. I'm also going to have to keep in mind backstage areas and getting to the transfer area and the maintenance area. So, and something else too, I wasn't quite sure what theme I wanted while I was doing all of this. It was something in the back of my head, but now I'm quite sure I'm going to go with the rustic theme. So you'll see later on I'll do a bit of terrain work, not too much terrain work, because again, I wasn't sure what I wanted, but now that I do know what I want, I'll go back in probably the next episode and do a whole lot of terrain work before I actually do any supporting. So I may even do the station area first and then go from there. I'll be using a lot of real-life examples of GCIs with how they're supported. It's pretty simple once you get started supporting it, but it's very, very tedious. For example, right now, the past couple of weeks, Silv was working on a roller coaster for Uzuri Gardens, which is it's a park that Gentil from Geekism and Mass Bandit are working on together. It's sort of a Busch Gardens, Islands of Adventure kind of theme park, and of course now with the release of Planet Zoo, that would be sort of an interesting topic of what if we could buy both games and then this wouldn't actually happen, but be able to merge the two games into one. But that would be almost impossible. Even though they're using the same game engine, both games are programmed so differently from each other that wouldn't work. But that would be a cool thought, though. And the coaster that Silv ended up coming up with is something I believe what GCI is going to start doing now with supporting their coasters using steel column supports like what B&M uses. However, with this roller coaster, I'm going to pretend it's sort of an older GCI where they only used wood. So something like Thunderhead, which I think is 13 or 14 years old now. It's getting up there in age. And for those of you who haven't been on a GCI, I've only been on one so far, and that would be Thunderhead. And it's definitely a really great roller coaster. I live about an hour and a half away from Gwazi or Busch Gardens, but I've never been on Gwazi because I got down here about 2 years after they had closed the ride, and now they're reworking it with RMC. So that would be an interesting thing. I may even go back into this coaster later on and redesign it as an RMC. I don't know yet. That would be a fun thing to maybe try. I just now thought of that. That would be fun. Right here, though, the big issue is how to get into the drop. And I think I may have figured that out, but now I'm working on the transfer area. A lot of GCIs, their transfer is, with two train GCIs, they typically the transfers are, there's only one track itself, and one train will stay on the main layout while the other is on the transfer track itself, and they're both under a shed of some sort. I'm not sure how other coasters do it, like Mystic Timbers. I've never been to Kings Island, so I'm not sure if they have two separate storage tracks or just one. But Dollywood, with Thunderhead, for example, has only one separate track like what you see here. For now, though, this track is just a placeholder. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to keep it or not, or if I'm going to build my own. I think I am going to keep it and then redress it a bit. And now I'm going to add some brakes and some drive tires to it, because most of these transfers are completely flat. They don't have any kind of vertical differences, so the train has to be able to get off somehow. And now I'm going to work on the terrain just a bit, just enough to get an idea of what I want. So I know I want the transfer area to be mostly on flat ground. Realistically, this coaster would be kind of randomly placed against a hillside, because when Silv built this coaster, he built it to be really terrain conforming. So you'll see a lot of the terrain is very close to the track. And I'm going to go in and redo a lot of the terrain. Not too much, because again, I want to keep it as terrain conforming as possible. But I am going to try to keep it, basically look at Thunderhead at Dollywood. I'm going to try to give it that kind of look. But Thunderhead is placed in a valley. This is not placed in a valley, so I'll have to do a bit of my own tinkering with the terrain just to figure out what I want to do. Now right here is where I'm going to have the path go over that bit of track, so I'm not going to mess with the terrain much there. And places like this where the track comes extremely close to the ground, I am going to lower the terrain just a bit because realistically the track won't be directly on the ground. It'll be a couple of feet above it, so you'll have the concrete footing and then your wood supports, or sometimes it's just a bit of steel depending on how much stress the track will be going through, and then the track itself. So, and up here it'll be up on a bit of a cliffside, and I'm still going to leave enough room to do some wood custom supporting. Because I want this whole half of the coaster to be basically against a hillside. I'm not 100% sure how I want the terrain to look right here where the transfer area is and the pre-drop area, but I've got a general idea. I'm probably going to keep a lot of foliage in there. I may even put maybe like a bit of a little waterfall. I'm not quite sure what I want, because again, I don't know if this is just maybe a highly budgeted park, or if they went all out and spent all their money on this thing. In terms of the layout itself, when I'm testing the coaster, it's almost just right, where the train will stop at the top of the lift for a couple of seconds before dropping. So I may adjust the speed of the lift a little bit, but I may leave it alone. I don't know. I need to open it to guests first and then see how long the train will pause up there. Because I don't see where the train is stopping the transfer right now. That's the only block section. I don't think there is a block section behind the station. I may go back in and add one there. I think I have just a friction brake, but no block brake. So I may go back in and add one more block brake before the station. And that's it. So this is what I have for now. I may, like I said, I'll go back in and do more terrain work and to figure out exactly what I want to do. But you can see up there in the top right, the whole bottom of the drop has been custom supported. Now this was with in-game supports. So Bear was working on this along with the in-game supports. I'm going to get rid of the in-game supports entirely and do everything myself. I like the in-game supports and how they look, but it's just not quite what I want. So I'll be doing everything custom. And yeah, so now we're going to take a ride on it, and I hope you enjoyed.